Hello everyone, welcome back to TH Designs. Today we are back with the Wheel of Wonders, which is probably the mainstream series on this channel thus far. We are coming hot off of the last episode, episode 9. That was a kind of wintry / Christmassy theme with the challenge of a one-of-a-kind coaster because every single element was unique to only one coaster in the world. If you have not seen that video, I do recommend you watch it. It is, quite literally as stated, one of a kind. From the coaster type to the challenge, to the theme itself, and the cinematics and everything were done in the snow, so it was quite seasonally timely. Today, like I said, we are in episode 10, which the fact that we're even at 10 episodes is pretty remarkable. As usual, I'm sure today's video will be very fun in itself, and with that said, let's jump over to the park, and let's talk about where to start. So welcome to the park. If you did not see last episode, this is a lot to look at and probably unexpected. We left off last video with the snow cinematic, as I mentioned earlier, and this is the first and only time that this whole park has really been shown with the snow blanket on top of it, and it's a lot to look at. It's extremely bright, and my GPU does not really like it, so we're going to turn it off. It was fun while it lasted. Let all that snow melt. This is the last build that we did. It was fantastic. It was really fun and very unique. And it kind of achieved the goal that we had in that video of kind of connecting this strip of land here to this pathway, because originally this was of course empty and it was kind of an awkward space for a coaster, but we filled that space nicely and now we have the freedom to connect this entire strip. Now for how many episodes we have left, I really have no idea. Hopefully we can fit 4, maybe 5 in here, depending on the size of them, depending on what challenge we get and all those things. We have the choice of potentially working in this corner here or even over there. I mean, really we can start wherever. So really the only thing that's left is let's jump over to the challenge wheel and let's actually figure out what the constraints for today's video will be, and maybe that'll dictate where we start this, because we have this whole thing to work with. So here is our challenge wheel updated to today's video, because we do have one new addition. As I've been saying in the recent videos on this series, I'm trying to lessen the amount that we are adding per video because we are quickly running out of space. I'm sure many of these will carry on to a potential second series, but we shall see. So we do only have one today, which you can see in the blue here, which is kind of an extension of an existing one that had already been on the wheel, which is that the entire coaster has to be built entirely underground. That kind of solves our space problem. I might even do this one by default as like our last coaster. Appropriate, I feel like, to have a coaster underneath the entire park. Just kind of a compliment to how crazy this park has been. But for now, that is an option, and we theoretically could land on it today, but everything else is up for grabs, except for, of course, the ones that we have already had in the previous videos. So with that said, let's spin the wheel. Hopefully something interesting. There we go. Okay. Must interact with a flat ride. This satisfies a lot of requests in the previous videos on this series. I think there's gonna be a lot of people that are really happy with this. I'm really happy with this. I've been really looking forward to this. So like I said in previous videos, I mean even just the last one and quite literally every video before that on this series, there are people in the comments that have been wanting flat rides installed into this park, and I don't blame you at all. It is a barren park without them. It doesn't have shops or stalls or restrooms or anything like that. I totally understand how the theme park goer probably looks at this and kind of twitches a little bit without those things, because how is it really a theme park without them? I totally understand that. In the first episode, I said that it was going to be more of almost like a nature walk instead of like an actual theme park, and this is more of just like a showcase of each of these individual coasters. So hopefully this kind of satisfies at least a little bit of that itch. Now, of course, the next question, the obvious question, is what flat ride do you even do? So my immediate reaction is that we have to do something like the radius, because I mean it's a huge hole. I mean, we could put the coaster right through that. That's nice and easy. Another one, and actually one that we thought of potentially doing for the 400-foot coaster over there, Colossus, we thought about doing the observation tower, which is right here, and then literally wrapping a coaster around it. That's an idea. That would be very cool, actually. And then as for another one, I mean, I guess you could always do one of these basic ones and like potentially do a helix over it or something, but that's not the most interesting. The Larson loop, you kind of have the same idea as the radius over there. That's potentially one. I guess this coaster could also be interesting. It has that little path, like that kind of gate underneath it. That could be good for path or coaster. That's not the worst idea. Maybe if we did like some kind of like shuttle launch that mirrored this. I don't know. It depends on what coaster we get, which I guess that's probably a good transition into the coaster wheel. So let's jump over there. Here we are on the coaster wheel, which is updated with every single coaster model that has been added to the most recent update. So we have all of the new ones from the Toy Box update that have been here for the past 2 episodes at this point. So everything here is fair game, should be brand new. So let's spin it and let's find out what's going to be interacting with a flat ride. I don't think I have any preference here. I guess something that ideally could be a shuttle launch would be cool. Limitless. It's a Limitless. There's some coaster names that I don't recognize, and sometimes they don't even have the same name as what's on the wheel, because I got that actually from an older one from like when the game just released. Limitless. Oh, it's the Gerstlauer. Okay, this is a very versatile coaster. I think this is pretty good actually. And it pretty famously has a vertical lift, which maybe we could do something cool with the observation tower or something. I don't know. We can think about it. The nice thing is that because this coaster is so versatile in real life and in game, it can do anything on the element wheel. So looking at Gerstlauer's website with all their products, you can see the Eurofighter is what Gerstlauer is known for. The Airtime coaster is their new kind of up and coming thing. The Infinity coaster looks to be what the in-game translation is. So this is our guy. The most popular example, I assume, is Hang Time at Knott's Berry Farm. If not that, I suppose the Smiler at Alton Towers also counts. Those two are some of the most famous coasters out there, especially the record-breaking Smiler. Now that we know the Limitless model is our coaster choice, let's see how tall the coaster will be using the random number generator. Set the minimum height to 75 feet, the maximum to 300, because a Giga Limitless Gerstlauer coaster sounds really fun. So let's see. 128. Okay, pretty modest. No complaints with that. Pretty easy stuff. A little bit taller than what you might usually see on this type of coaster, but that gives us a lot of speed to work with. So this is a pretty good coaster to have. I'm pretty happy with this. I was kind of hoping for a shuttle launch, and I don't think that this has that capacity even with no track limits, but I think that that vertical lift gives us the chance to potentially do something fun. It can do just about anything. It can run any of our elements, and speaking of elements, we have a new elements wheel, or at least new additions. So let's jump over to that and let me introduce you to the 10 or so new elements on the wheel. You're going to see some new stuff this episode, just like last one. So this has historically been our coaster element wheel with every single coaster element on it, so much so that you actually can't even see the individual elements. Typically what we do is we take off the ones that have been used most recently, so that what we're working with are generally newer ones, or at least fresher ones. But today we are adding more to this list. Here is that list of the new elements for today's episode. Some of these you've already seen in the past, some of these you just saw last episode. There are 13 new additions. There were comments asking that those elements be added to the usual wheel, and I didn't disagree, so I added them here. You can see there's 5 new inverting ones, which are the red that you see here, and then there are 8 blue ones here, which are non-inverting. Any underlying ones are one of a kind, and ones that you probably saw in last episode. So here's the wheel after we added those 13 new elements. I also kept the ones that have been removed in the previous episode, so now we have a brand new, fresh wheel. So more likely than any episode before, other than the last one, you are going to see a new element that has not been on any coaster before. So let's spin it and let's see if the element that we get is going to be one that we maybe could incorporate in the drop, most likely in the vertical lift that we're going to have, or if it's just going to be a standalone. This will be right after the drop. Let's see. 128 foot drop. We have plenty of momentum to work with. Let's see what the first element will be. Rollover Camelback. Rollover Camelback essentially it's something that you only really see on the new Vekoma, the new gen models. I think it's only on 2 elements in the world. You can see a little blurry image of it here. I'll find a video to help kind of visualize it a little bit better, but it's essentially kind of almost a zero-G roll meets a top hat meets like a sweeping turn. I don't know what the best way to explain this is. It's on Circuit Breaker, which is the new coaster in Austin, and I think it's this element here. But I may be wrong about that. No, it is this one here. So the coaster drops down from the tilt and then sweeps up, and it's essentially like this outer banked kind of non-inverting loop element. It's very weird. It's almost like a conglomeration of many different elements. So with those flat rides on the side, the potential ones that we might pick, I don't really know when we're even going to decide which ones we want. I kind of have to feel it out as we're going. Maybe we get an element that lends itself towards one of these. Before we do that, I want to figure out where we're actually going to place this guy and then create some kind of path work like we typically do. And then of course we'll jump into that rollover Camelback. So typically these models are very small. They typically don't have big footprints really at all. The boundary of the park is right there. So we actually have way more space than it looks like we do. Maybe we don't even need this whole area. Maybe part of the challenge will actually be keeping it in a small footprint. I'm thinking of having the path not quite connecting with that one yet. We'll save this for another video and we'll attack this area primarily and try and stay in this kind of box more or less, so that whatever coaster's here, maybe theoretically we got a hyper coaster or something that was larger in scale, a giga coaster, whatever it might be, we could use this strip if we needed to. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. I don't know, with the flat rides being here, maybe we will need the whole corner. Anyway, enough yapping, I'm just gonna place it there. So I built like this little path. I think we're going into this was probably the least kind of like creative guidance. Like even like last video, we had the path done entirely and built the coaster around it. I really don't know what I'm going to do here because we're going to be using a few different flat rides. Whether we use 3, whether we use 1, I don't know yet. It would be extremely helpful if we knew what the theme was, because I feel like that would actually be pretty important with kind of figuring these things out. So I'm just kind of going into this blind and probably going to touch it up retrospectively rather than knowing what I want beforehand, which is pretty unique for this series. Usually I kind of know what I want more or less. So as I'm building the lift, I'm realizing that there's actually 2 different types of chain lifts that you can use. This type of chain lift is the one that you see on like Hang Time, which is very cool, and I do want that. But the smallest we could possibly make it is 139, which is over our limit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use just the rounded one and get close to it, because you see that that is much better. So there we go, there's 122. One of my thoughts while building this actually is having the coaster go through that little flat ride. That would be pretty cool. For now, I'm just going to build it so that it goes through the gap, and then we are now going into the rollover camelback. So we'll cut to that time lapse real quick, and I'll build that element and we'll see what's next. And yeah, this video has been very different thus far. Alright, wow. There's the rollover camelback done, and it was way harder to make than it probably should have been. It doesn't even look that perfect, but the POV, it looks really smooth, and it kind of has the same idea as a rollover camelback. There's not that many images online that are at least good quality. Essentially, you just have this big drop that does go underneath this flat ride, which I actually kind of like that moment. Of course, we'll make it look a little bit more realistic and stuff, but it banks a little bit to the right to kind of allow it to bank back to the left. It's essentially almost like this Immelman that then turns into like this non-inverting loop. That's kind of the best way to explain it. And then it sweeps down and kind of does like this S-bend dive. That looks pretty good, pretty smooth. It's very dynamic and very interesting. From the path, it looks pretty interesting. I also made the track red, which I guess was probably the first thing you noticed. It was harder to see when it was all black, so I just made it bright so I could see it. Let's see what follows after. Alright, the rollover camelback has been removed. Let's see what follows afterwards. Very fascinating first element. I'm excited to see what's next. Hopefully something that can interact. Batwing. Okay, another turnaround element, not super ecstatic about that. So wait, Batwing is a heart-shaped element. You can see a picture of it here on Viper. It's on a handful of different coasters. It was really famous on a lot of aerodynamics coasters, which you can see mentioned a few times here. You can see a better picture of it here. This is on Montu. This is an inverted version of it, but it's essentially the same thing. Not too difficult. It's something we've had before. We actually had it on Komodo over here. So as it pertains to our coaster here, we don't really have enough room for the right side of the element, so I'm probably going to have some kind of transitional bend towards the left, which would kind of fit really nicely coming off this drop. Maybe something kind of like that. For now, let's make a Batwing. Alright, there's the Batwing done. It looks really nice, I think. It's pretty symmetrical. You see it does go subterranean, which isn't too unusual with this type of element. We've done it, I think, on every time we've had this element. I think it goes underground, more or less. So we're either going to have to come up with something creative with theming, or maybe we give it the typical kind of subterranean concrete that we did like over here on Komodo, or that we also did over here on the bow tie. The speed in which it actually exits this rollover camelback is pretty good. That banking actually isn't too bad. And then relative to the bow tie, that's a pretty healthy speed, I feel like. We are exiting the way that we came in, so hopefully we get something that allows us to avoid some kind of awkward moment with this track. Let's see what's next, and hopefully something that lends itself towards one of these flat rides. We've at least got one so far. I feel pretty good about this one being like that. It's a unique moment. Alright, the Batwing is removed. Let's spin, and let's see what follows after. hopefully not a turnaround element, but the majority of these elements are. The hammerhead turn. Okay, there's one. That is a new one. We've never had this though, so that is a good thing, but it is a turnaround, which I wasn't looking for. So the hammerhead turn is one of the new ones that we just introduced. It was pretty much, I don't know if it's exclusively a B&M element. It looks like it is. You see it here on Nitro. Candemonium has one. This is Leviathan, giving Leviathan some love. It's a big turnaround moment, and it's essentially like a banana roll, but if it kind of was like slanted. I don't know. As for where we put this, that's a good question. There is a potential interaction with a tower if we wanted to. We could theoretically like put it in the middle of the element. I'm going to have this bank pretty sharply to the right past this element. I could have it go over the flat ride, but I feel like that's a little too unrealistic. I don't know. Maybe we'll see how sharp this turn is, and maybe we have to do that. But this turnaround has to be away from like the center from this coaster, because I want this to be very compact. Alright, there's the hammerhead turn complete. Pretty easy, about 65 feet tall. I originally had it much higher, but it just wasn't making it through the layout. You see we added all these S-bend turns, which exiting that bat wing is a high enough speed that it's pretty interesting. See the coaster coming through now, actually. Exits going through at a high speed, and then goes through there pretty nicely. I might actually have to raise the friction multiplier. It's a little fast. I really like how this is coming together. This is the end of the layout. That's like as far as like relative to dimensions that I want this footprint to go. I want the rest of this layout ideally to happen in this kind of area. I want this to be as small as possible, really. We could do like a Larsen loop or something going in the middle like that. I think it's a little silly. I just don't think we're at the scale to do something with the radius. If we are going to go through the middle of something, I think it has to be the Larsen loop. So we'll see. Anyway, on to the next one. So there's the hammerhead turn removed. Let's see what follows after. I swear if it's a turnaround element, I will be a little angry. Ideally not. Interlocking corkscrews. Okay, that's very interesting. We've actually had this only one time before, and it was on the satirical corporate coaster. Interlocking corkscrews are something you see on plenty of different B&Ms, especially like floorless or sit-down coasters. Here it is on Kumba, one of the most iconic photos of any roller coaster ever. Like I mentioned, a lot of B&M floorless coasters have these type of elements, and we have had this before. Over here on the corporate coaster, you can see it here. What we did here was we had to go through one corkscrew, and then we did an immediate turnaround into this second corkscrew right away. Now, do we do the second corkscrew immediately? That is really the question. We are set up very nicely to interact with the track here, but typically what makes a interlocking corkscrew an interlocking corkscrew is it goes over itself. So I'm trying to think of like how we can have this interact with itself. If we have it exit coming a little bit straighter this way, we could potentially like double up with the track that we're going over. I think we have enough speed to do that. You may not even know what I mean by that. Like I say in almost every video, I just kind of have to build it, and we'll see if it works or not. But I think this might be a cool thing to do, but we shall see. There's the first corkscrew done. It's a very wide corkscrew. Now what the other corkscrew has to do is it either has to go over this segment of track and continue that way, or come this way and go over that same track. Either way, vice versa. Or it goes over this segment of track with the straight track coming this way, if that makes any sense. Or we could potentially do it here as well. You can see it going through now. Yeah, that's a really healthy speed going through there. We have a lot of speed to work with, probably about 50 miles an hour right now. My only concern is that the brake run is over there, and we kind of want to slowly gravitate that way, but we are kind of staying in that small footprint that these models are known for. Let's see what's next, and let's see if we have to either do the second corkscrew now or do it after. We'll figure it out. Alright, there's the interlocking corkscrews removed, but we're keeping that second one in our back pocket for later. Let's see what follows after that first corkscrew. A turnaround element actually wouldn't be the worst thing in the world here. Barrel roll isn't the best, to be honest. This is the opposite of a turnaround. The reason I thought a turnaround might have been okay was it could bring us back and do that second corkscrew, but a barrel roll does the opposite. It pushes us further away. As usual, we cover every single element before we actually build it, so for those that do not know what a barrel roll is, essentially a twist, but it revolves around the rider rather than the track itself, which would be an inline twist. That's where you get that kind of track offset that you see here. Colossus is probably the best example in terms of showing somebody. I mean, you see it perfectly right there. So this is a fun element to make, and it's really easy to make, but if we made it, we would be finishing over here, far away from that interlocking corkscrew. So here's what I have in mind. I do have an idea, and it does include a flat ride. If we go up just a little bit to elevate this barrel roll for like a little mini airtime moment, we can do the barrel roll here, essentially, and then we could grab a Larson loop, and you guessed it, put it right in the middle. So that gets us another flat ride interaction. Now, relative to the corkscrew, we can just do the barrel roll. If we don't get a cutback element, we'll make our own, and we'll start heading back that way, and we'll do a second lap almost coming back either this way, or maybe we go through the bow tie or the bat wing, excuse me. We'll figure it out. I don't want to do an awkward turnaround right in the middle of the layout. Again, I would rather do it at the end, and then come back and then lap one last time towards that brake run. But anyway, I'm going to make the barrel roll quick, and it is going to go through the Larson loop. Anyway, let's get building. Alright, there's the barrel roll done. Pretty easy, definitely the easiest element to make, I think. You see it coming through the corkscrew now. It then rises up and then goes through there at a solid speed. That's a little fast because you kind of lose some hang time, but I'll take it. We need that speed to come back around. So let's spin the wheel. If we don't get a turnaround, we're going to have to probably make our own kind of turnaround before we eventually do that second corkscrew that kind of has our hands tied at the moment. Really happy we got a second flat ride interaction, and maybe we'll get another one. Alright, there's the barrel roll removed, one of the more basic elements on this wheel, but a more than welcome addition. Very easy to make, very appreciated. Wave turn, there's the turnaround element. Okay, cool. So wave turn is something you see on a few different manufacturers, but primarily RMC. I guess there's only 4 out there. I thought there were way more. Every time we get this element, I always reference this planet coaster image here. It's a big turnaround, and it basically kind of extends inwards, looking more or less like a wave. You can see it on here and here. We've had this in the past, most recently on the toy video, which is this, or no, that's the wraparound. This is the wave turn right here. You can see that little kind of motion there. This is a smaller example of it. We also had it on Deadeye where you can see it a little bit more clearly. Not a bad element to make. It does mean we have to drop back down, and it does get us turning this way, so that's appreciated. Alright, there's the wave turn done. Pretty easy. We've had it a few times in the past. I decided to have it go this way so that we're kind of lining ourselves up to potentially do that second corkscrew. It did mean I had to turn the barrel roll to the other way, so it's going clockwise now. That allows us to turn right and to kind of keep that smoothness. We are heading out here with fairly good speed. Hopefully we get an element that helps us out, because we still need to come back this way. Alright, the wave turn has been removed. Let's see what goes between that second corkscrew, most likely. And the wave turn. Splashdown. That's funny. Okay. This is one of the new ones. So a splashdown is exactly what it sounds like. The coaster interacts with the water with scoops, typically on the train, something that you see on Griffin here. You also see it on Diamondback, which you can get a picture of here. This is it on Shambhala, which is technically not a real one when you consider the scoops that are on the train. This model is actually in Planet Coaster. This is the actual model here, and it does have those scoops built into the ride with an actual element. We are going to have to, of course, make a fake one, but the question is really, where do we put it? We could go over this and then splash down underneath here. This is weird. Also, theoretically, this would slow the train down. This is actually a form of mechanical brakes, so this technically wouldn't help us when we're trying to get back to the station, but we gotta do it. So, again, knowing the theme theoretically would help us out a lot here, because we could think of an idea of how to incorporate this, because this is definitely going to be an element in the theme. This splashdown is actually probably going to hurt us when it comes to the theme, because if we don't get something that is summery or lends itself towards water, we're probably going to be screwed here to make it look nice. I'm thinking of actually having it drop down, because what I'm looking at here is that the Batwing is already subterranean, so maybe this is tiered a little bit and we could do it. I don't know. I think this gives us the most creative opportunity when we get to the theming, is if we do a splashdown that's lower here with the terrain. I don't know. Again, you'll just kind of have to trust me. Alright, there's the corkscrew done, as well as the splashdown. Of course, it doesn't look like a splashdown now. I'll leave it up for whenever I do the theming, but this will be where it will take place. It then shoots up into like this small sharp turn and to a wraparound corkscrew. So this is probably the curveball that you spotted in the time lapse, and this is the second corkscrew in the interlocking corkscrews. This is not a typical corkscrew, but rather a wraparound corkscrew, which is basically just a turnaround element. It does not specify technically what type of corkscrew it has to be an interlocking corkscrew, so this is kind of my way of allowing it to interlock while still turning back around to do the finale. I think we can get one more element before we end up doing the brake run and everything. So let's see what that element will be. Alright, there is the splashdown removed. This will probably almost certainly be our final element on this, which I think might be our 7th, maybe 8th. I lost track. Let's see what it'll be. Hopefully something that's straight. A turnaround would literally ruin everything. An S-bend, okay. We've had plenty of S-bends. S-bends are easy. Usually I override these, but because we're losing so much momentum, I think we kind of need it, to be honest. For those who don't know, S-bends are essentially a transitional element more than anything, and they're pretty much exactly what you see right here. I think this is a picture of DC Rivals. And really, we've already had plenty of them. This in itself is an S-bend. So we're just going to make another one that's probably a little bit more exaggerated, and that will take us to the brake run. Alright, there's the S-bends and everything done. I really like how they look, and then the POV, they look really smooth. Really fun finale. Probably the best element we could have possibly have gotten. It interacts nicely with the terrain. I'm really excited to see what we come up with for the theming and how we navigate this area here. There were a lot of moments of kind of hesitancy and worry almost with this ride. I especially with that interlocking corkscrew, I thought that was kind of throw a wrench in the plan, but we navigated the back and forth because there's a lot of there's a lot of lapping happening in this coaster, but with the splashdown and the S-bends, we kind of got away with it, and I think it looks really nice. One of the more fascinating layouts that we've had, and I'm really excited to see how this comes out. So with all of that said, let's jump over to the theme wheel and let's see how we're going to stitch this together. Here we are with the theme wheel, which is updated for today's episode. You may notice we have some new ones. We have 3 new additions in today's video. Thank you to everybody who suggested different themes in the last video. The first one that was suggested was the idea of a rickety or incomplete coaster. You can see that here with the incomplete tile. That was thanks to this comment, where the idea was kind of like incomplete moments of track as if the coaster was still under construction. Maybe moments that could utilize the no track limits mod where we can make the track invisible, things like that. I thought that was very fun. Second, we have Dealer's Choice, which was recommended kind of, but I'm not including that as a new addition. So we still have 2 other ones. That one's pretty self-explanatory. The other one that was recommended was Vintage, which is like the old amusement park, maybe 1920s, kind of Luna Park type, the planetcoaster 1 vintage pack idea. That was thanks to this comment. I love that idea. And the last one is Pier, which again is pretty self-explanatory. If we get that one, we have to make it fit next to some kind of ocean or something similar. I just realized there's still some on here from the past video, so I'm going to remove those quick, and then we'll figure out which one we're working with. There we go. Those are removed. So every single one here has not been seen in a previous episode, except for Pirate. That was in the lost episode. But otherwise, we're working with something new. So let's see what we get. Hopefully we're helped out here, but alright, well that's one way to help me out. Appreciate that one. Dealer's Choice. Self-explanatory and extremely coincidental. So for one of the harder coasters to theme, I get to choose whatever theme I want, which is almost hard in itself because out of anything, what do you even pick? It's almost easier when the wheel gives you a theme and you know constraints, and in a way constraints give you freedom. I have a few different ideas. I really have 2 that come to mind. And there's ones on the wheel that I have in mind, and there's ones that are not on the wheel. And the first one that is on the wheel is sci-fi. The flexibility of sci-fi would help kind of deal with this pit. The splashdown, I almost think, could be lasers instead of water or something really fun like that. Or maybe it is water, and then there's some kind of sci-fi Godzilla monster mecha thing, I don't know, that comes out of the water. Sci-fi would allow us to do things that are typically unrealistic. This huge tower could very easily be turned into some kind of tube or gun or pulsar, I don't know. The other one I'm thinking is Japanese. And the reason is because this lowered pit and the inclusion of the splashdown, it just makes me feel like it should be some kind of garden, Zen garden, or some kind of oasis almost type of thing. And maybe it's the red track as well, which is kind of setting me on that track. The reason I specifically picked Japanese is, to me, the cherry blossoms specifically are in the game, and to have a red coaster or something similar maroon next to these pink cherry blossom trees with some potential Zen gardens or waterfalls or things like that, I think could be really beautiful. And Japanese architecture in itself is absolutely gorgeous, and it's actually not in game, so we'd have to get pretty creative with the tools at hand. I think sci-fi is kind of a cop-out. I think you can very easily make sci-fi look good. I think Japanese will be harder, and in that way I almost want it. Like for any of our nature-themed ones like tropical or winter, we've never really had anything like, if we did Japan. I think that is my personal dealer's choice. I mean, just look at this stuff. If we could do even a fraction of this, something like with the big Tories, with the huge almost temple style roofs, the waterfalls you can see there. I mean just imagine a coaster embedded in something like this. Anyway, enough yapping. Maybe in a way Moroi acts as Mount Fuji in the background. That's kind of fun to think about. So anyway, as per usual, we're gonna jump over to the final product. For you it'll be a few seconds. For me, it'll be not a few seconds. So I'm gonna get to work on that, and I'm really excited to see what I come up with. And yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed the layout. I think it's very, very interesting, and I will see you in a few seconds. All right, everyone. Welcome back. This is probably, I'm just going to say it off the bat, this is probably one of my favorite ones in the entirety of this park. I am in absolute love with this coaster. It's a lot to probably take in, as we say per video at this point. Every single episode, the scenery is a lot, but this one is especially lovely in my opinion. The coaster's name is Torii, which of course is named after the classic gates that are pretty much the symbol iconography of Japan as a whole almost, alongside the cherry blossoms, which you see there are plenty of. There's a lot happening in this little plot of land, so let me just walk you through the coaster and the little bit of scenery that we did here. We decided to keep the pathway plaza, the transition from the little Viking area, using one of the Torii gates. Speaking of, all these little ponds and springs that are scattered all over this place with some beautifully colored foliage and scenery, which is just the stamp of a lot of the Japanese scenery here. This is the first and only, I believe, coaster in this park that does not have a covered station. I don't know why I did it. I just kind of loved how the bamboo looked in the back. I don't know, I just kind of thought it looked very neat, kind of more open than rather than enclosed. While we're here, I guess we'll start talking about the trains themselves. They are decorated kind of very modestly in some kind of Japanese-esque design. These mythology fences and that very geometric design kind of lends itself a little bit more towards Chinese rather than Japanese, but it's not a design that is atypical, so I decided to include it anyway. And for some reason you did have a problem with that. I just stamped Japanese flags on the back of everybody's headrest, so this is undeniably a Japanese design train. I actually really like this car. We stuck with the red and white and everything, and it looks really nice. Of course, first we start off with that 90-degree vertical lift where you actually have the name stamped on the side of the lift, and it's wrapped in LEDs, so at night they do light up, which is pretty cool. I was pretty proud of that. Almost getting a little hint of the kind of Neo-Tokyo style that you see. It jumps down this vertical lift through the flat ride, which was the first flat ride that we had included. I decided to theme this flat ride after the Great Wave painting, which there's literally a stamped photo of on the ride. I saw the wave design as being an option for the paint style, and I kind of just ran with it. I decorated the actual car itself. The actual flow of the flat ride kind of leans towards riding a wave anyway, so it felt kind of appropriate, and it was a chance to do something different than the rest of the coaster. Once it goes through that and through the gates, then it goes to the first element, which of course was the rollover camelback, which this is a very modified rollover camelback. Typically rollover camelbacks sweep to the side. This one is almost more of an Immelman, but I would say it still technically qualifies as a modified rollover camelback. Either way, I really like how it looks. There was a little bit of custom scenery that had to be done, which is really just this segment here, otherwise not too much. But then it sweeps through this kind of S-bend drop. We are then introduced to the valley with all the Zen gardens, all the springs, the waterfalls, the little temples and villas that are everywhere. This is really my favorite part of the build. But for now, let's just follow through the rest of the layout, and then we can talk about the little bits of details and scenery. We jump into the Batwing, which is probably the most obtrusive element. It really stands out compared to everything else that really flows through it, but overall it doesn't look that weird in my opinion. I think it kind of hides nicely. Then it goes through these high-speed turns into the hammerhead turn, which you see the train is actually about to go through right now. Then it weaves in and out of the interlocking corkscrews through the wraparound into the first corkscrew, then up into the barrel roll, which goes through the Larsen loop. which you can see in action right there. A very neat little element. I like that a lot. Then it dives down into a wave turn, which wraps a little bit around this little, very little temple and this huge waterfall, diving into a little bit of a double down into the splashdown, the makeshift splashdown. So this is technically not a real element that is a part of this model, but with some pieces that kind of made it look like it might do it, and it actually does splash down, which you're about to see as the train comes in now. Prepare yourself, this is pretty cool. I like that a lot. That looks really sweet. Then it goes through the wraparound corkscrew, weaving through the S-bends, in and out the Zen Garden, past the waterfall, and then finale through bamboo and through cherry blossoms. Now that we've gone through the layout, let's actually talk about the rest of the build here. Of course, you may have noticed this huge drop tower. It is the third flat ride that I ended up incorporating along with the other two. And of course, the observation tower was the first pick, but it was just a little too big for this plot of land. I wanted to put it inside a Japanese villa as the station, and this drop tower fit perfectly. So I think that that looks really nice. I'm really happy with this little build. As for the Zen Garden, I just used the simple gravel path that kind of gives that illusion of the sand or gravel that you see in Zen Gardens. There are some pieces of workshop blueprints, and that is really only for the gates. So this Torii gate here, I will include that in the description, as well as these big red ones. Could I have probably recreated it myself? Yeah, most likely, but these were already on the workshop and they look phenomenal, so why not? I just want to make sure I'm giving them the credit that they need. And the only other one in this entire build is this bridge here, which again is kind of the same logic. I just love how all of it intertwines with one another. The path does extend around the coaster with another bridge going over the river here. And then we have a little cherry blossom forest, which is more of a walkthrough exhibit for the guests more than anything. Really just an excuse to connect us over to that Larson loop. I think there's a lot to be really happy with. It is visually and aesthetically one of my favorites, as I've been saying. As for stats, because we do have a lot of you that care about stats, this is one of the highest rated stats of any coaster we've had thus far. We're reaching almost a 7 on the excitement scale, which is phenomenal. Typically we're in the orange, but this coaster pretty much I think blows away. I'll have to look at the end when we do a kind of recap once this series is over to see where all the coasters rank statistically, but this has got to be up there, at least from memory. This is one of the more impressive stat lines. I will update the workshop code so that if you want to experience this ride and the rest of the park, you absolutely can. I truly do feel that this has been one of the best installments thus far, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. So thank you for all the love and attention that you've been giving to this series and to these coasters. They've been so fun to make. It's been so fun to bounce ideas off of your suggestions. And yeah, I think this is another successful video. With that said, do take care, everyone. I will see you in the next video. Keep an eye out. There will be one coming out really soon, and I'm excited for it. Take care, y'all.